Hi and welcome to my video on how to make RC B-25 airplane. If you stick around, you will see step by step how to make one with all the ups and downs along the way. So let's get on with the build. I start with the usual. Print out the plans, then cut out all of my pieces out of 10mm foam. Now that I got all the parts, I can start building. First, I start off with the wings. It's a simple design. I just gotta cut them at 30% cord and bevel the edges. Fold them in a little and make a simple wing. I use a template just to get the proper airfoil. The center part I make the same way with the exception that I got to add the bottom for this one, just to make it easier later on to mount the engine bays and the wheels. I bevel the edges before assembly just so the profile isn't too thick. This is what it looks like. Then, let's put the wings together. I use the dihedral template that I included in the plans just to connect first the center section. Then I bevel them again, and with a little bit of tape and hot glue, and I put them together. I reinforce the joint with the fiberglass tape on both sides, and the same way I attach the outer wings. Also reinforce them with the fiberglass tape. Then I cut out the ailerons using the plans template. Bevel the edge and I attach them with the fiberglass tape to the wing. Now that the wing is done, I get on with the engines. I start off with the cowlings. I use a paper tape to tape it all over, just so the foam won't snap, and to prepare it for painting later. The first former goes in. Then, let's get on with the engine bays. I try to keep it as simple as possible so it's only a few pieces. I set the bottom part of the firewall back by 4mm to give it a little bit of a down thrust. Lastly, I add on the piece of foam just to make cowlings mounting easier later on. Now I mark the outline of the cowling. I use the plans template again, and now I just have to carve away the excess of the foam just so the cowlings would fit in quite nicely. I add additional 2 formers on top of the cowlings so I can cut them out later and sand them to the required shape. Now this bit, cutting out the inside circles, isn't too elegant because I couldn't figure a better way to cut out the formers. I need to work on this one. But then, with a bit of patience and sandpaper in the end, they came out pretty nice. The final sand of a bay, and let's just test fit them. I'm happy. This is what they look like. Now I'm going to mark out where the formers are going, and let's get on with the fuselage. Let's put them in one by one, making sure they're dead on the center. I'm making these two little notches because I'm going to use a Velcro tape just to secure the battery even better. I didn't include that in the plans because I don't know what you guys will be using to secure your battery. For me, this is the way to go. For the front section, I didn't cut out exactly as the plans say. I gave it a little bit extra just to compensate for any inaccuracies. I'm going to shave the excess off later on. Same goes for the windscreen. I'm just using a scrap piece of foam. I'm now cutting off the excess and the fuselage is nearly done. After sanding and taping the entire fuselage, I'm cutting out the bottom bit below the wing to carry on with the build. I'm going to bevel the top edge a little bit just so my polyglue will have a better area to hold on to it. Also, I'm going to cut out this bit of a plan so I can mark out a hatch for the battery and the receiver. For the hatch lock, I'm using 2 popsicle sticks at the front. At the rear section, I'm going to add 2 pieces of foam, and I'm going to secure the entire thing with the skewer stick. I didn't include these 2 parts in the plans because I figured you guys might have your own ways of securing the hatches. For me, it's simple, it's cheap, and it's efficient. And that's the way I'm going with it. The elevators go in the same way the ailerons did. I'm just beveling the edges and I'm going to use fiberglass tape to put them on. I'm going to use 2mm rod to bind them together. First, I'm going to cut a little notch in the foam just so I can sink in the rod and secure it with the glue and the tape. Then the vertical stabs in, making sure they're nice and square. Now I'm using the before-mentioned polyglue just so I can mount the wing with a peace of mind, so I don't have to rush it and I can make it nice and square exactly the way I want it. I'm putting back the bottom piece just using the good old hot glue. Now you can see me marking the auxiliary lines just so I can align the engines easier. I'm putting them in, making sure that they nicely aligned with my lines and fuselage. Now it's time to start putting in the details. I'm going to close off the engine bays, making the bays extensions sink into the wing. After I have glued in the stabilizers here, making sure they're nice and clear, I'm going to reinforce that connection with the toothpick pins. Time for the final touches in the build. 2 pieces of foam spliced together will make the turret. Again, I'm cutting and sanding to the shape. I close off the fuselage with 2 pieces that I'm going to shave later. And at the rear gunner position, that's another 3 pieces of foam carved to the shape. With this bit, you need to remember to leave the clearance for the elevator rod to move freely. The last bit of foam is the air intakes. Now the fun starts. My favorite part, painting and decorating. You guys couldn't decide in the poll I did on the channel what to paint. The results were bang on 50/50ths whether to make it all silver or olive green. So I decided then to combine the two and paint it 2 colors. I've decided to detail my model a little bit more, so I've painted a few strips of a paper tape silver, so I could imitate glass framing. I'm cutting out the thin strips of it, and using those, I'm gonna detail the glass parts. This is my favorite part, putting the stickers in. Those obviously I've included in the plans. I gave her invasion stripes because I think they look really cool. And of course, I wouldn't miss out on the flyout logo as well. And I figured it wouldn't be a proper B-25 if we didn't give her some freedom calibers. So I made them out of painted skewer sticks. That will make the armament. I had to solder the extensions for the power supply. I'm using 2 1400 kV motors, 30 amp ESCs, and one 3-cell battery. It turned out the snaking of the wiring was quite troublesome. So I do recommend don't be making my mistake and leave yourself a piece of string in the wings. Because I did struggle and I had to open up a new hatch on the roof just to make it possible, but it was necessary in my case. If I have left a piece of string, I wouldn't have to bother with that. Build is nearly done. The motor's in. The ESCs go in right behind the motors, and the soldered wiring will connect them to the battery. The receiver in, and we're nearly ready to go. To secure the cowlings, I'm using again the toothpick pins. For the landing gear, I'm reinforcing the body with fiberglass tape, and I'm using a 2mm rod according to the plans. I do recommend using a lot of tape for securing the landing gear. You're going to see later why. To the nose assembly, I'm adding additional strut because it came out quite wobbly, and here we are. She is ready to go.
Some pre-flight controls test. As you can see, I used differential thrust in place of the rudder. And let me tell you, Maiden was not a plain sailing. First of all, as I told you before, I didn't put enough tape to secure my landing gear. It kept letting go. Then I corrected my mistake and up she goes. So after the trip back to the workshop for the repairs, here we go again. And you don't even know how happy and relieved I was, seeing her fly nice and steady. Honestly, I have no idea what happened before. Most likely, I just didn't build enough speed before trying to maneuver and simply just panicked. Yet she flies stable and quite fast, and I am loving it. But then I look at her, and something looks odd. So I brought her down, removed the legs, and hand launched back in the air. And look at her now. If this is not beautiful, then I don't know what is. If anyone is interested in the plans, please see description below. I put the details how to download them.
No, bitte.
Please consider subscribing to the channel. It is only 2 clicks away, and it really means a lot to me and drives me into making more interesting projects. Thank you all for watching and see you in the next one.